up, what up? I always laugh at myself during this part because this is like when you wait for everybody to come in, wait for some people to show up. I don't really have the patience for it, but yeah, we'll give it a few minutes. I called this politics as usual, and I want to do this video today to really speak about some of the things I've been seeing, some of the things I've been reading, some of the things I've been hearing through having direct conversations with people in and on the ground around a lot of different issues. As you know, a lot of different issues going on nationally and locally. If you know me, you know I like to focus on the local. So you got the methadone mile movement going on, or Marty's Mile. You got the boycotted stashes. It ranges from large size epidemics all the way down to people frustrated about the new bike lanes on Cummins Highway, traffic control around American Legion, all these changes, all these things that affect you from big and small, they really all tie back into politics as usual. And before I get too deep into it, I want to speak to the realist. And when I say realist, I mean, the people that don't believe in politics. And I'm not here to persuade you to believe differently. I just want to kick it with you for a second before I get into the idealists. And to this is what I want to say to those that don't vote, to those that don't believe that you can fix the system through politics. In a lot of ways, I agree with you. And this is coming from somebody who used to be a politician. And this is why I say it. Like, politics is to me, is a major cog in the wheel, but it's just one part of the resistance. And when I speak about the resistance, I'm speaking about, we know in this country and across the world, but in this country, there are forces working against us every single day in, day out. They don't sleep. The shit just rolls. And so I'm thinking about resistance. In my own life, I had to figure out where I was going to resist and at what times in my life I was going to resist. And one of those things became politics. And I know a lot of people say, well, politics as usual, it's always the same, nothing changed. I get it. So I just wanted to share that message. I get it. One of the reasons, though, and I'm going to try to switch into talking to some of the idealists because I think there's a little gap. One of the reasons why I think things don't change is because we don't all possess the same understanding. We have some own personal failures of ours as individuals, as a community, as neighborhoods, and until we correct some of these, I don't see much progress being made. Right? So let me get these disclaimers out first because I don't want anybody to take it. Well, if you take it, how you gonna take it? Some of you might not like what I have to say, and you might not agree, and I'm cool with that too. These are just my beliefs. Some of them are my opinions, and when I'm stating fact, I will state it as fact, and I will show you some data to back it up. If it rings true to you, then it rings true. But you should know that I'm speaking from my lived experience. You know what I mean? Like, I'm 44 years old. I spent 44 years in Boston. It's different from when I read a post from somebody, and I'm not knocking it, but somebody that's 28 says, "Oh, I miss when Mayor Menino was mayor." No knock to Mayor Menino, but if you're 28 years old, all you know is Mayor Menino, and you was a kid, so you don't really know what it was like to politic with him, or the policies he put forth, or the good or the bad things that might have affected your community that you might be unaware of. So I'm speaking to you from a place of lived experience, from going from an activist to an elected official, being screwed over, back to activist, and I continue on. I'm still trying to rep my community and help those that ask for help and need help. So now I got that out of the way, right? All these issues I just mentioned earlier, let me be clear. Right, and there's different titles for it. Shout out to Senator Wilkerson. I want to kind of phrase this. I'm glad Senator Wilkerson has chimed in because everybody is not for everything, right? We all cannot play the same exact role. We all have different skill sets that we must use to resist. And I don't want to force anybody into a lane. You have to figure out what your skill set is and be honest with yourself and be honest with what your capacity is and what you're willing to endure or what you're willing to do for yourself, your community, and your family. So let me just quickly define community. So before I get into community organizing, because people might have a different sense of what community is. Certain people define community as your neighborhood, a geographical area. I was raised in the Dudley Triangle between Blue Hill Avenue, Dudley Street, Quincy, and St. Patrick's Church, called the Dudley Triangle, right? near Packies. Um, that's my geographical neighborhood. Some people define their neighborhood as, you know, a union, a community that's a union they're in, or they got a church community, or they got a community that's based around an issue. They work together from that. So wherever you feel like your community is, it could be your 5 friends, it could be your study group, it could be your book club, it could be your exercise group. These are communities that you work and live within. Community organizing is not for everyone. Even though I feel everybody can do it to a certain degree, there's levels to it. Not everybody's going to do it at the same level. We don't all have the same capacity. We don't all have the same free time. When I was running for office and at I think at my highest capacity, I didn't have any children. I didn't have a significant other. So it was easy for me to dedicate 10, 12, 14, 16 hours a day just to reading policy, going to community meetings, and repeating that day in and day out to soak as much in as I can. Things aren't working. Or if they're working really slow, and usually we feel like we're taking, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, and it's become like a jacked up line dance. And you hear people start to throw the word around accountability. And this is where I really want to address accountability. Accountability sounds nice. It's a nice term. We're going to hold this person accountable. We're going to hold that person accountable. But again, there's levels to it. Let me go back to the realist. You can't hold accountability starts with self. Let me start there. Accountability starts with self. And I say that because that's what you control. That's where you have the most authority is over yourself, what you do day in, day out. Whether you go to that meeting, whether you share that information, whether you are active on behalf of your community, or whether you are active on your own, that's what you control. That's where your accountability starts, right? Everybody has that level of accountability to themselves when you look in the mirror. And then it starts to grow. It starts to grow through those communities that I was just talking to you about. Depending on your responsibility and your role in those communities, you can start to gain what we call power and levels of accountability. But I say this because when people say, well, we need to hold the elected officials accountable. And usually I'm on here and I'm typing and I'm writing and I'm speaking about holding elected officials accountable and what we should do. And I'm usually, y'all used to me dogging elected officials, but that's not what I'm here for today. I'm talking about self, what our role is. If you're going to hold, let me put it to you in a simple term. If you're walking home, and whether you're male, female, we'll make it gender on gender. If you're a woman, I want you to imagine a woman. If you're a man, I want you to imagine a man. I'll speak to the men. If you're walking home, and I'm 5'10" on a good day, 175 pounds. If I'm walking home, and I walk by a man who is 6'3", 240, and he, for some reason, wants to physically assault me, I don't have power. I might lose my physical power to him. I don't have authority. I cannot control his actions, right? In that moment, ain't no holding him accountable. He is taking physical authority over me. Now, if I want to hold him accountable, right? Now, don't act like we don't talk like this in our neighborhood, because I'm not being politically correct. I told y'all last time I'm leaving that alone. If I want to hold him personally accountable, what I would do, a younger me, a more reckless me, gets on the phone and I call up a couple more dudes my size. Or I might not call anybody. I might go get a baseball bat or something else and come back with some more power, come back with a weapon to be able to balance the scales of power. You get where I'm going with this? So when you say to me, let me do the right thing, I could also call the authorities. I try, in my personal practice, I'm very uncomfortable calling the police on people that look like me because, it could go all over the place. I'm glad my man LJ, I'm glad you jumped in. You missed the part I was speaking about you earlier. This is one of my favorite skeptics. He really doesn't believe that politics creates change, but the brother's good enough to donate to one of my campaigns. So I appreciate you and I understand the struggle that we live, and this is what I'm speaking to. So if I'm going to hold, now let me go back to elected officials. This is where they count. I hear this people throw it around all the time, and we got to hold people accountable. You have to know that a district councilor wins an election with 11,000 votes. maybe less, sometimes 5,000 votes, sometimes 6,000 votes. And you have to understand, you don't have to, but it would be good to understand exactly how that machine works if you expect to hold that person accountable. If I raise $30,000 for an elected official, and in my neighborhood, well, I'll come back to that. If I raise $30,000 for an elected official and you donated 10, not saying your 10 ain't worth nothing, but it's more likely I have more influence and sway because I played a different role, a heavier role in that system, right? I might get my call answered before you do. I might get a call about the bike lanes and say, how is that going to affect my business? I might get a call about, whether this development fits in my neighborhood or not. But let me take it away from me. The neighborhood I grew up in, the Dudley Triangle, there's an organization called Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative. And in its heyday, when it had what I believe had more political power and more political sway because we were more organized and coherent, and we had come to some agreements as a community, right? It didn't just fall out of the sky. We met weeks after weeks, month after month, year after year to make sure that we all agreed that this is how we wanted to run the community. And because so many of us had agreed to it, when the city wanted to do something in our neighborhood, they made sure they checked in with somebody at DSNI. They made sure that the board was okay with it. They made sure that the neighborhood was okay with it. I don't know if DSNI still holds that same sway, but I'm just using it for an example of how you gain accountability. It was gained through numbers, being organized, and us communicating within ourselves about what our expectation is that we agree on, and then anybody coming into our community had to adhere to those expectations, or we didn't go with it, or we pushed them back out. That was a level of accountability. My personal story, some of you know that I used to be a state rep, but long before you knew me as a state rep or you heard about me after being a state rep, I was doing the work, and I had to crawl, and really, it was people like Senator Wilkinson and Mel King that really kept me from falling on my face because they really taught me I had to crawl before I wanted to run, because everybody wanted to run. I know everybody, I should run for office. You should run for office. And your friends tell you all the time, hey, you should run for office. Nah, not until you know what you need to be doing. Not until you've crawled and built up your own constituency and developed a community. On my block, I might have started going to community meetings about 2005. I was working for Michael Flaherty, City Council at Large Michael Flaherty. And don't get it twisted, I was only there, oddly enough, because then Councilor Chuck Turner had pressured him to making sure that there was people of color working in his office because he represented the whole city. And prior to me and the late Joe Feaster III working there were none. So I'm there now, I'm going to community meetings. I had been going to community meetings in my neighborhood, but now I'm going to city meetings, and I'm understanding how the city council works. I'm understanding how the city department works. I'm meeting city leaders. I'm figuring out how they do it in Southie. I'm figuring out how they do it in Westie, how they get organized to have this kind of power where they got the potholes fixed, the lights working, crime is addressed, mental health is addressed, substance abuse is addressed in healthy ways because the community is together and asking for the same thing. So I'm going to these community meetings nonstop. I've gone to more community meetings. I wouldn't even try to count it. I couldn't even put a guesstimate on it. And in my neighborhood, I'm starting to feel myself a little bit. On my block, if somebody has a problem with a pothole or a street light or something like that, they stop me. And I hand them my little business card that says from the office of Michael Flaherty, Carlos Enriquez, Director of Constituent Services. And I'm like, I'll get that done for you. Now, I'm going to do it through Michael's office. I'll give Michael his props. But I'm going to get that done for you. And I'll follow up and I'll come back and knock on your door. Hey, the street light's on? Good. Appreciate any other problems, call me. And I started that out block by block. First with people I knew, then it was people that were familiar to me, and it started to grow. And as it started to grow, I felt like, okay, I think I understand the system. I need to learn more about it. But I'm starting to grow my community. It's getting bigger. So I got the bright idea I was going to run for office because now I wanted to hold those that weren't doing it accountable. But I had, I feel like I had a couple hundred people with me. Turns out, a couple hundred people ain't enough. Councilor Turner showed me by whooping my ass in an election, 85% to 15% in 2007, that I had not developed enough of my community and accountability and strength, political strength, to have the seat that would then raise my level of accountability to be able to weigh in on policy, to weigh in on budget and things like that. So I go back to the drawing board. I go back to what I was doing. I continue to help. Now a few more people know me, a couple hundred people know me, and I'm still doing the same thing. I'm starting out. It starts out as a service. It's really just service. I'm serving others. I'm not getting anything in return for it. I'm not getting money for it. I'm getting a paycheck from Council Flaherty, and actually after '07, I didn't even go back. So now I'm just doing it on the strength of. I'm working part-time somewhere else, making minimum wage or close to minimum wage, not even a livable wage, and I'm just doing the work to try to grow my community. 2009, I'm running again. I still don't have the numbers to gain enough political power to occupy a seat. It wasn't until I am 5 years into the game, which is now 15 years ago, that I garnered enough support to make the machine go, to make my machine go, and then give back to the community. Right? Now I feel like I took a long time on that. But that was to show you that there's a process to gaining this power, this community power. It does not happen overnight. It doesn't happen because you elected somebody and you expect just because they put some words on a flyer that they were automatically going to do the job that you hoped that they were going to do. Maybe it was the job that they promised that they were going to do. They might not even know how to do the job. And if you don't know what their job is, how could you hold them accountable if neither one of you know what the job is? So I say that to say this, right? We all have a role to play. The stashes, I'm going to use stashes as an example because it's what's going on and people are feeling an emotional attachment to it. You've heard what stashes is, how they've been treating women in the community. If you want to send a message, it needs to be a sustained message. Believe me, if you hold a boycott long enough, that business closes. Not only have you come together as a community, and people are starting to share, let me back up. You've come together as a community, but you've also sent a strong message politically and civically that what you won't tolerate. So hopefully you won't have to do that at the next takeout restaurant or any other business, because now they know, in this community, they're using their money as power. They're organizing. Now, it don't happen overnight, and I feel terrible for the sister Ella that it happened to and all the other women that have had a similar experience. But for the boycott to happen, community had to happen. People had to communicate. People had to share information. The Domingos de Rosas, the Rob Tonys, the Cornell Mills, everybody that was sharing this information had to share it, had to make sure that they're passing it through their community, sharing the information. They had to show up in solidarity. Not at the same time. Some people are there on one night, some people are there the next night, but people are putting their energy in where their mouth was. They're backing it up with action. That's how you start to build community. And you start to build community power through that. That's accountability. Just getting on and saying, we need to hold somebody accountable is not accountable. Let me take it another level, what's going on in Boston. Police reform. Today they announced a lot of police reform. And I know a lot of people that have been working on this 15, 20, 30 years. Senator Wilkerson probably been working on it since she first became a senator in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. And it doesn't come easy, and people are wondering, what took so long? This is a resistance, and we're up against people that do this day in and day out. And without the community, you out there standing on the front line by yourself. And this is at all levels. This is not just the electeds. This is you on your block. You want a pothole fix and you feel like you're out there by yourself. Talk to your neighbors. Build it out. So now there's 10 of you that are pissed about the pothole. So 10 of your calls means a lot more than one of your calls. 10 of you paying attention to what the mayor's doing and talking about what the mayor's doing carries a lot more weight than one of you. But we have to be more intentional about how we're sharing our information, because it is resistance. We're up against it. South Boston been playing the game. They know how to play it. They haven't always played it. Irish was shut out, and I'm not trying to compare their short-term misery to ours. We all know that it's not the same, right? We all know that Italians and the Irish have gone through discrimination from other white people, but not like black people. But their model of using community power works. We all know it works as a proven method. Same thing economically. People that come into our community, different ethnic groups. Dominicans are doing great around economic growth around owning liquor stores. There's Korean and Vietnamese that are doing great economic growth around hair salons and nail salons. And the reason why we're not doing it is because we have not come together as community. And I want to go back to how basic it gets. Until you have sat down with your neighbors or your church or your labor group, or and you have come up with a set of terms that you agree to. We're all going to boycott stashes until they're closed, until spring of 2021. And everybody says, yes, I'm down. Now you've built a movement. It's not just a spur of the moment, or it's hot right now, it's a hashtag right now. It has to be sustained action. Accountability requires power. It requires authority. It starts with self. And then you grow in size. And then you grow in numbers. And I feel like, we know these messages, but I'm challenging everybody to do a little bit more to build community. And shout out to the younger people. Shout out to the younger people that are doing it, because as we get older and get comfortable, you got a house payment, car payment, we got things that people will trade off their activism for and don't want to be on the front lines. So I really am recording these messages to really hopefully reach out to people 30 and under, because that's where social movements really live. And I'm just trying to share information in the game that I got from going through it. But it's it's the Darrell Weathers, it's the young people that are going to be out there that are outside stashes. It's what I'm saying, it's Kingston being out there at 11 and 12 years old. Like, these are the people that are going to lead your movements and sustain your movements. These are the people we need to pour into to build community. Otherwise, we just continue to do the same thing. So I'm going to challenge people again. I'm not going to stay. What are we at? 20. I'm ready to wrap it up already. I want to shout a few people out, and I want to point people in a few directions. Please maintain the boycott. Please join the boycott. Please share it. Share it as much as we share memes, as much as we share all the jokes. Let's share it just as much, if not more. I would love to be funnier on my social media, but I feel like I have a responsibility to be more informative than funny. So most of it, I get light every now and then, but most of it is to inform people. Please pay attention to police reform, because just because they make some announcements and act like things are going to change doesn't necessarily make it so. You got a police commissioner, a black man as police commissioner, who does not believe there is racism in the Boston Police Department. Matter of fact, he's upset that you would even insinuate that there might be. So if that's what he believes, reform ain't going to come easy whether he agrees to it in the newspaper or not. People are going to have to stay on it. In my opinion, if you want to know who's on top of it, you should keep glued to Jamal Crawford and his Blackstonian website. You should also be talking to Boston branch of the NAACP. And I'm not saying I don't have you can't have criticism. You can criticize them both, but still be involved. Still be involved so you can get the information and know how to press back. Marty's Mile, Melody and Cass, you heard me talk about it last week. This is ongoing. This is what's dope about this and why I'm speaking about it. Because Domingos has been doing this for 8 years. It's not just a hashtag. It's not because he has run for office. He was doing this long before he was running for office. But it takes, now here's the different levels, real quick. Domingos is a coach. He's been out there as an activist. I've worked with him. Leon's worked with him. Yahaira Lopez is now affected. Her mother lives close by and has been affected by it. She's run for office before too. But she understands now. She's the administrator for a group called the South End Roxbury Partnership 2.0 on Facebook. And she does a great job moderating this and making sure that the group is open and informative so that you can get information about it. And now they're hosting meetings every night with different city councilors, state reps, and other officials. Tonight at 6 o'clock is Michelle Wu, City Councilor at Large Michelle Wu. Tomorrow at 6 o'clock is City Councilor at Large Michael Flaherty, both who have represented this area for the entire time it's been going to shit. So here's your chance to engage, because this is their role in community. This is what they have the capacity to do, and what they're doing for no benefit of their own except to help serve the community. And what they need is more support. The more numbers in this group, believe me, the mayor and the city councilors are paying attention, because 3 years ago they wouldn't even respond to our emails. Now they know they have to come out to these meetings because it's getting louder. And the louder you get, the more you amplify their voice by being in those groups, the more respondents there'll be. You get what I'm saying? You know what I mean? You bring numbers to, it's a resistance. You bring numbers to the beef. You don't come to the beef the same way every time, because they're going to dismiss you or you're going to lose. You know what I mean? They come with 5, you come with 10. They come with 10, you come with 20. That's how power is grown. That's real accountability. You have to be able to beat them at their game, and to be able to beat them at their game, you have to know their game. So please join those meetings tonight. I'll be in there, and and I hope Councilor Wu was able to see my critique of Councilor Janey, so she comes a little bit better prepared tonight. And same thing for Councilor Flaherty, because like I said, these people represent our community, and it's not just enough for me to say we're going to hold them accountable, and they work for us and we pay. Yeah, they make $100,000 a year. They're not getting a free ride, not from me. I'm on them, and you don't have time to come to the meeting. Cool, not everybody can come to every meeting. So my responsibility is I'm going to listen in, and then I'm going to come back to you, and I'm going to tell you what was said. And I'm not going to tell you what to think. I'm just going to tell you what was said, and you can decide for yourself. But that is how I feel I contribute to growing the accountability, to growing my community, and serving. I appreciate y'all stopping and listening. Shout out Brawlic Numbers Music Group, Etel, Yo Soy Mas Bueno. The sweatshirt is by D. Lachey. These are both local groups out of Boston. Check them out if you will. Very intentional about how we support local, and I hope you are too. This is the work. This is the work.